Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Dhari Yasodhanandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivara Yasodhanandana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe. Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada Gaura Premanande Jai Vishubhad Paramahamsa Pri Vrad ke Saath Stotra Satya Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Hiraboy Charanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Sridham Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Andiviti Founder Charya Divine Grace Sridham Prabhupada Ki Namasarya Sridhar Haridas Thakur Ki Samavata Bhakta Vrinda Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Tirantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Thai Gauru Pimanande all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurandaritam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhisam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Andeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavam Sya Srirupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Paritana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Visakanditam Sya Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Sabjakan Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vansakalpa Tirubhyasya Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Atitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiraya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, let us first offer respectful obeisances unto Narayana, the Supreme Personality, Narayana Rishi, the supremmost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and unto Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesha Badrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatutamashloke Bhaktira Bhavati Naistiki. by regularly hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and by rendering a service unto the pure devotee. All that is troublesome within the heart becomes destroyed practically to nil, and a loving devotional service unto the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, becomes established as an irrevocable fact. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahmasamitam Uttama Charitam Sakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swasyaya Maha. This Srimad Bhagavatam, known as the Granthara, the king of all the literatures, is the literary incarnation of God. It is compiled by the incarnation of God, the Srila Vyasadeva. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people. It is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Vasudevaya Namaha. Om Vasudevaya Namaha. Om Vasudevaya Namaha. Mukam karoti vāchanam pāgum langayate girim yatripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Janataranam yatripa tamaham bande Sri Gurum Janataranam. Hare Krishna. Welcome to our Bhagavatam class. We are continuing from the second canto, chapter number 6, chapter 6. Purusha sukta confirmed, and let's see. We have read a few verses. Now today's number 7. Yes, 7. Text number 7. Vikramo Bhur Bhuvaha Swas Cha Shimasya Saranasya Cha Sarva Kama Virasyapi Harish Sarana Aspadam Vikramo Bhur Bhuva Swasya Kshemasya Saranasya Cha Sarvakama Varasyapi Haris Sarana Aspadam Vikramo Bhur Bhuva Swasya Shimasya Saranasya Cha Sarvakama Varasyapi Haris Sharana Aspadam Vikramo Bhur Bhuva Swasya Kshemasya Sramasasya Cha Sarvakama Varasyapi Haris Sarana Aspadam Vikramo Bhur Swasya Kshemasya Sarvakama Varasyapi Haris Sarana Aspadam Vikramo Bhur Bhuva Swasya Kshemasya Saranasya Cha Sakama Sarasyapi Haris Sharana Aspadam. Okay. Vikramaha. Forward steps. Bhu Bhuvaha. Of the lower and the upper planets. Swaha. As well as of heaven. Cha. Also. Kshemasya. Of protection. Of all that we have. Saranasya. Of fearlessness. Cha. Also. Sarvakama. All that we need. Varasya. Of all benedictions. Api. Certainly. Harihe. Of the Lord. Charanaha. The lotus feet. Aspadam. Shelter. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Thus, the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter for the upper, lower, and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. His lotus feet serve as protection from all kinds of fear. Kindly repeat. Thus, the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter for the upper, lower, and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. His lotus feet serve as protection from all kinds of fear. Purport. for absolute protection from all sorts of fear, as well as for all our needs of life, we must take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, not only in this planet, but also in all the upper, lower, and heavenly planets. This absolute dependence on the lotus feet of the Lord is called a pure devotional service. And it is directly hinted at within this passage. Okay. No one should have any kind of doubt in this matter. Nor should one be inclined to seek the help of any other demigods, because all of them are dependent on Him only. Everyone except the Lord Himself is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. Even the all-pervading supersoul is also dependent on the supreme aspect of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. So reading the verse again. Thus, the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter for the upper, lower, and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. His lotus feet serve as protection from all kinds of fear. Very strong statement made by Srila Prabhupada here in the verse, in the text, the translation. Actually, in the purport. Whereby Srila Prabhupada explains pure devotional service as absolute dependence on the lotus feet of the Lord. This is our disease in the material world. We tend to forget our absolute dependence on Krishna. Every breath that we take is possible only by the mercy of Krishna. We are not, it is, we say, happening automatically, isn't it? But nothing happens automatically. There is a reason, there is a cause, there is an agent, or there are agents, there's a controller. And of course, if we trace that, the supreme agent, the supreme controller is Krishna. And it is only when we come to that platform of pure devotional service, or to that platform of absolute dependence on Krishna, just like a small child. Small child, by nature, he is absolutely dependent. Sometimes children, they will play with the father. Children will be standing on the chair and just immediately they'll just jump off without telling because they know father will catch. Uh, so this is also nicely mentioned actually in the Bible. Lord Jesus mentions, unless one becomes childlike, like a child, innocent, dependent, absolutely dependent on the mother, one cannot go back to the kingdom of God. So our disease in the material world is that we have become independent movements all over the world. We want our freedom. We want our independence. We should decide everything ourselves. Why we should listen to you or to him? You see, this is called arrogance, foolishness, because that is governed by the mode of ignorance, tamagun. Majority of people, we suffer in the material world due to this ignorance, due to this pride. Pride and arrogance go hand in hand. When we are proud, we even reject good advice from our parents, from our elders, from grandmother. What do you know? Vedic culture teaches from the very beginning, early life, how to be respectful, how to be humble, how to be submissive, how to recognize our real position of dependency. And it is only upon attaining this or developing this absolute dependence. Prabhupada uses the word absolute, not just ordinary dependence, absolute, completely, 100%. Then one becomes fearless. In the material world, everyone is fearful. We see that especially in the animal kingdom. The birds are looking this way, that way. Always fearful somebody will come and attack. Therefore, in human society also, when we are not properly taught or trained in this way, we develop this fear, which fear means anxiety. Anxiety is actually very taxing on the body. Anxiety is taxing on the brain, on the mind. In the Bhagavatam, it is nicely explaining that we cannot properly practice devotional service if our mind is in anxiety. Therefore, that very nice verse that I find myself quoting often, because Prabhupada quoted it often. Evam prasanna manaso. The mind needs to become prasanna. Prasanna means calm, quiet, peaceful, happy. Therefore, what is the definition of a devotee? And in English? In English, what is the definition of a devotee? Krishna Chaitanya. In one word. One simple word. Devotee is someone who is happy because he has no anxiety. Actual devotee is without anxiety because he has no fear. Even devotees should have come to the point of having no fear of death. isn't it? Because he knows that actually I'm not dying. I'm dying, but I'm not dying. So this anxiety, this fear is what forces us to take on another body. Anything connected with the material mind, any material desire, any material anxiety, any material fear, any material feeling, any material thinking, forces, by the law of nature, forces a living entity to again take birth somewhere. Yeah. These are the three activities of the mind: thinking, feeling, willing. Thinking, feeling, willing. Therefore, as devotees, by this process recommended in the Shastra, beginning with Sravanam, Kirtanam, hearing and chanting, we gradually train ourselves to think about Krishna, to feel for Krishna, uh, and to desire for Krishna, to desire to please Krishna. And in this way, if we develop this mentality, we will have less gray hair. People have gray hair or no hair. One reason, there are many reasons, um, because they have no anxiety. Krishna has no gray hair, even when he's 90 years old on the battle of Kurukshetra. His hair is black. You know? So, um, interesting here how it is mentioning that the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter of the upper, lower, and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. So this, in the text, Sarva Kama, Sarva Kama, we find it in the Bhagavatam at different places. Sarva Kama, sometimes this Kama is sometimes translated as material sense gratification, lust. But in this context and in a few other places, it refers to actually material needs also. Because we have a material body, we have material needs. So here it mentions all of the material needs for the living entities are easily and automatically provided when we take shelter of the Lord, when we become dependent on the Lord, when we follow the good directives and instructions given by the Lord. The lotus feet of the Lord serve as protection from all kinds of fear. So therefore, the devotees of the Lord are trained to take shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And because this is explaining how from the lower, middle, and upper planetary systems, everything is moving by the will of the Lord. Not a blade of grass, isn't it? Not a blade of grass moves without the will of the Lord. There are many blades of grass on the planet. Uh, Nothing happens, nothing takes place without the sanction of the Lord. So when we understand this, the more we know this, the more we understand, then it means we have no reason to be fearful. In one lecture, that's also in the series on the Nectar devotion that Prabhupada was giving in Vrindavan, 1972. Prabhupada explains how actually in the very beginning of the Nectar devotion, there are 6 immediate effects, immediate benefits of one who takes to devotional service. And the first one is devotional service brings immediate relief from all kinds of anxiety. Because we begin to understand our dependency on the Lord. And the Lord's promise in the Bhagavad Gita, at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvadharmam parityajya mamekam saranam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishri mashuchaha. He promises that I will protect you. So in that particular lecture, Prabhupada gives the example. If somebody comes to you and tells, don't worry, I'll look after all of your matters, affairs. Isn't it? If somebody tells that, we will feel very happy. Of course, we know that ordinary people are not always able to do that, generally not able to fully. But when the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is not an ordinary person, who is all powerful, who is the Maha Ishvara, the Supreme Controller, when he makes that promise and we take that to heart, when we actually accept and surrender to his promise, then we have no reason actually to remain fearful. Otherwise, we have all reason in the world to be fearful. And that's why those who are not yet fortunate to come in contact with the concept of Godhead and the concept of natural dependence, isn't it? They must be fearful, and they are fearful. So this is a nice instruction being given here. Another point in the purport Prabhupada is making, this absolute dependence on the lotus feet of the Lord is called pure devotional service. No one should have any doubt, any kind of doubt in this matter, nor should one be inclined to seek the help of any other demigod, because all of them are also dependent, isn't it? All demigods, any big man, so-called big man in this material world, is also dependent, isn't it? Ekale Ishvara Krishna Arsabhritya. There's only one Supreme Personality who is master and controller, and every other living entity actually are dependent. Everyone except the Lord himself is dependent on the mercy of the Lord. And Prabhupada makes the point also, even the all-pervading supersoul, even the all-pervading supersoul within the heart of all living entities is also dependent on the supreme aspect of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. So this understanding we can develop. This understanding gradually becomes more clear, and it happens actually in a very natural way, practically automatically. Just like also in the Bhagavatam, it explains that when we take up activities of pure devotional service, then automatically we develop detachment from this material world and we develop knowledge. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitaha Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Sayad Ahaitukam. Ahaituki means causeless. Causeless Jnanam, knowledge, and causeless Vairagya. Vairagya Vidya. There is a sloka, and we had one book in the early days, Vairagya Vidya. For ordinary people, they don't like the word Vairagya, detachment, because generally people are very attached. They're attached to being attached. But as this verse is nicely, this verse Vasudevi Bhagavati, and this is explained in many places. It's also underlined by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. We were reading the other day how I think Haridas Thakur will remember in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, after quoting many Sanskrit verses, is telling that I have quoted many. This is he's writing in Bengali, but in this particular chapter, he's quoting many Sanskrit verses. Then at the end of the chapter, he's telling, kindly excuse me, or don't mind if I have quoted many Sanskrit verses. Even if you don't understand it, it's good for you. You just go on reading and hearing these Sanskrit verses, and gradually you'll become purified. One day you'll fully realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. This is the magic of bhakti. This is the magic of all of the activities, just like prasadam. We give prasadam to people who are like Nastik, who don't believe in God. They believe in good food. They like what is palatable to the tongue. So prasadam is actually very tasty because it's prepared with love and devotion, and it is Krishna himself. So even those who are Nastik, non-believers, without even knowing, without even realizing, they benefit. One day they'll become devotee. And any type of activity in devotional service, like even if somebody just has in his whole life, if somebody has just one rasgulla, he will be born in a human body. The power of one rasgulla. Even one time having prasadam. Even we give prasadam, just like this dog that was following the devotees going to Jagannath Puri. One dog was, especially Shivananda Sain was looking after this dog, became very attached to that dog also. So that whole story is nicely narrated in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That dog actually reached the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu before everyone else. because somebody had forgotten to feed the dog one time, and the dog somehow made its way to Jagannath Puri, and then the Shivananda Sen, when the devotees arrived, on seeing that dog, Shivananda Sen, who felt responsible for having like offended the dog uh, by this is a Vedic mentality. Any kind of disturbance that we bring to someone, one should feel uh, that this is uh, that this is like committing violence or bringing pain or suffering upon someone. So any kind of disturbance, because he was responsible to feed that dog, and he was late, so that day it did not happen actually. So anyways, when they arrived, the devotees arrived in Jagannath Puri, they were amazed to see that that same dog was standing like this in front of Lord Chaitanya, and Lord Chaitanya was throwing some food at the dog. And it is said that the dog was chanting Hare Krishna in his own way. And it also explains how that dog, because he received directly this mercy from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the dog the next day actually left the body and went back home, back to Godhead. I mean, yeah. Normally dogs don't go back home, but in special cases, this dog did. It is the statement in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So therefore, just like it is explained in the by our Vaishnavacharyas that during the time of Lord Chaitanya, many people who did not believe in the holy name, they would make that sound, or they would ingest, imitate without believing, but they still got benefit. Even one place it mentions how a few of the Muslim persons who were doing like that, they found themselves kind of like repeating the holy name again and again and again. They couldn't get it out of their system. So this is the power of the holy name, the power of devotional service, that it will gradually, it will act even more quickly, of course, when we make ourselves an effort, when we attentively perform our various devotional activities, and but even the power of transcendental sound vibration, the power of devotional service is so strong that even if one is not as attentive as he should be, still one is getting benefit from this. So better to take the full benefit more quickly than having to drag things on and on and on like that. So this is the verse I will read again, and if there's any comment or question, let's see here. Yes. Thus, text 7. Thus, the forward steps of the Lord are the shelter for the upper, lower, and heavenly planets, as well as for all that we need. Sarva Kama Duga Mahi. His lotus feet serve as protection from all kinds of fear. So in the purport, Prabhupada repeats the word absolute at least twice, beginning in the first line, for absolute protection from all sorts of fear. as well as for all our needs of life. We must take shelter at the lotus feet of the Lord. That's the first. And the second, this absolute dependence on the lotus feet of the Lord is called pure devotional service. Nice. So Krishna Chaitanya has any question today? Okay, you can think about it. Yes.
You told that according to our desire,
Yes.
we have to take another body.
Yes.
So is it good to have a desire for
A good body.
becoming better class of devotee in the next birth?
Is it good to have a desire to become a devotee in the next birth?
Yeah, good standard devotee.
Good standard devotee, yes.
Yes. Or going back to Godhead, that kind of desire.
Well, that's a very, elevated desire, which Shastra is telling us that we should desire to go back home, back to Godhead. Of course, the essence of going home, back to Godhead is to be fully absorbed and engaged in devotional service. So that's why personalities like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and other great exalted personalities, they understand that actually that's the most important. So wherever that may be, wherever, whether in spiritual world or in the material world, my main desire is to be engaged fully in the service of the Lord and to be in the association of devotees. This is one of the prayers of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. If I have to again take birth in the material world, my dear Lord, please arrange that that birth be in the house of a devotee, because I'll get at least remnants of prasadam. You know, I'll hear the transcendental sound vibration. I'll see sometimes the tilak on these devotees if they are serious. Yeah. So that question was asked to Srila Prabhupada on different occasions, and I know that Prabhupada answered once that actually the general devotees should be planning and thinking to get out of this material world and to go back to the spiritual world. Our desire, material desire is uh, not good. Material desire is binding. But spiritual desire, because we cannot stop desire, it is liberating. So our spiritual desire should be fully to engage in bhakti, pure, unalloyed, unconditional devotional service, absolute dependence, as nicely mentioned here. So uh, that can be wherever the Lord desires me to take, to be or to serve. Yeah. Uh, yes. Yes.
About going back to Godhead.
About going back to Godhead. Yes.
Of course, that is our final destination.
Yes.
But at the
You
same
want to?
time,
Yeah. Go ahead.
devotees who are like elevated devotees generally they don't carry that kind of no. If I myself should go to back to Godhead, and that is that they don't feel who are elevated stage.
Yes.
So they generally the devotees who are elevated stage, they seek all jivas should get elevated and should go back to Godhead. That
Yes.
kind of higher
Yes.
thoughts will be.
Yes.
But at the same time, uh, is it not a desire? Is it not a selfish desire that we should go back to Godhead and serve the Lord? And can we also like I have read in one book that going back to Godhead is not relishable as serving as a devotee to God.
Well, so similar question. Should the devotees desire to go back to Godhead, or should they desire to simply being engaged in serving? The idea is that when we go back to Godhead, we will be serving. We'll be serving the Lord. We'll be serving other Vaishnavas also. Of course, there's a special feature in the material world because actual Vaishnava learns to serve the non-Vaishnavas by helping them to become Krishna conscious. So this is, of course, a very high level desire and feeling, which is in the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, this I believe Mukunda, one devotee was praying to the Lord in this way that my dear Lord, I don't want to go back. Let all the other, let me take all the sins of the conditioned souls, so that because that is what is preventing us from going back home, back to Godhead. Our sinful activities and our connection, our ties with the modes of material nature. So he was praying, let all these sins, I will take all of these sins and let them go back to Godhead. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied that, you see, even all the living entities go back home, back to Godhead, the universe will again fill up with sinful, and there are so many universes also. It is a nice desire to simply want to serve the mission of the Lord to the point of remaining in the material world to serve that mission, if so desired by the Lord. And if one is on that platform of being able to pray in that mood and mentality, that is fine. But generally, that is reserved for those who are really on that higher level of transcendence, isn't it? Yeah. So it is not actually selfish to want to go back home, back to Godhead, because we want to serve the Lord. But our desire to serve the Lord should be such that wherever the Lord wants me to serve, either in the spiritual world or within the material world, because in the material world, there's so many conditioned souls that need to be given opportunities to become, liberated also. So it's kind of a fine line. We should not start preaching, don't think about going back to Godhead. In one sense also, anyone who is fully absorbed in serving the Lord and preaching the mission of the Lord, he is already back home, back to Godhead. Yeah. Because so Prabhupada also explains how actually we speak of the material world, material energy, but actually those who are on that liberated platform of self-realization, those who are uttamadhikaris, they don't see the material world as material, because they see it as Krishna's energy, and they see everyone engaged in either Krishna's internal energy or in his external energy, according to their karma and this and that. So therefore those who are what we call Gosyanandi, Bhajananandi rather. There are two types of devotees. Those who are mainly absorbed in bhajan. Bhajananandi are referred to as like uttavadikaris. So they will Prabhupada mentions, I was reading just a few days ago and I sent that small quote to devotee. Prabhupada, in explaining the difference between Bhajananandi and Gosyanandi, he tells that actually the Bhajananandi, they're very, very nice. They are preaching not preaching. They are absorbed in this way, in remembering the Lord, and in serving the Lord in that way. But they are not acharyas, Prabhupada says. The Gosyanandi, those who, and Prabhupada mentions how his Guru Maharaj was Gosyanandi. He had a desire to preach. He had a desire to save the conditioned souls, and therefore the Gosyanandi, he is referred to as Acharya. And therefore our line is to be, to become Acharyas and to be following as Gosyanandi, preaching. We're primarily a preaching movement. Yes. Yes.
Regarding the prasadam.
Prasadam.
Yeah.
Yes, you don't believe in prasadam?
Like in our community, like Prabhupada, when he established the Govindas in
Yes.
the West, like in California.
Yes, Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Yeah. Because to attract more devotees, to get more devotees.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, because whatever it is available and they used to make and they used to serve prasadam.
In ghee.
Yeah, in ghee.
In ghee.
Yes.
And only in ghee. Yeah.
Whereas now the current situation is that still we are buying from outside and we are cooking here and non-organic as well.
Well, at that time also it was like less, but anyways, yeah.
And which are like non-organic and they cook and they even the milk items and many things, like pasteurized milk and
correct,
many things.
Yes.
So a few devotees when I have interaction, they say that when Prabhupada allowed us to cook with such kind of, because in America, you know, like how they how they draw the milk and they abuse milk and they make milk products. So the same thing even in India now, what they are doing. So that is my personal feeling that of course it depends on the bhava also how the devotee will offer to Krishna. So how should we take that the prasadam then? Because even in it is all concept like these devotees if they eat that kind of prasadam, at least they will get that kind of consciousness, the good consciousness. At least they will think of God and think how we should take that. Still, our devotees should take that kind of prasadam or like.
So the question of prasadam is an important topic, a big topic also. Should we continue to offer foodstuffs on the altar in our different temples that that is coming from unknown sources, and that is, we know most of the food is grown non-organically using chemical pesticides and etc. The same thing with milk. That was a major issue just a few years ago, whereby, as we know, the the GBC had passed a resolution whereby this year, nobody talked about it actually, 2022, all of our temples are supposed to offer ahimsa milk and ahimsa milk products, in our temples. The idea is that in the early days, to start the movement, Prabhupada made many concessions, and this was maybe less of an issue. As we become more aware and conscious of how the food is being produced and where the milk is coming from, then the more we are aware of these things, we should be making an effort to only offer. It's like what is the purest. Krishna is Rajavidya, Rajaguyam, Pavitram, Idam Uttamam. He's the topmost personality and the purest personality, and therefore our level of service should be as high as possible. And so therefore, the aspect of Kaladesha Patra comes in the picture because not every center, not every place is the same. But the basic underlying principle is that the more we make an effort to offer what is as pure as possible, that means when there is possibility, and we should be making an effort in that direction to offer only the purest and the most tasty and most healthy of foods, because after that is being offered to the Lord, it goes to the devotees, isn't it? So the Lord is happy with our offering. He doesn't look only at what is offered. He looks at the mentality in which it is offered. He also knows that whether those who are making offerings are sufficiently endeavoring to offer the purest type of foodstuffs and milk and their products as well. And this is, of course, directly related and a very essential aspect of the whole Varnasrama ideology. Varnasrama ideology is inducing the general population, and actually that begins with devotees, to to a higher, gradually to a higher level of consciousness, isn't it? Bringing the general population from the lower modes of nature to the, at least to the mode of goodness, and then beyond, of course, from the mode of goodness to pure goodness. So it is very much a part of should be part of our lifestyle. This is again very basic to Vedic culture, again to Varnashram, to grow our own food, because to not only grow our own food, but to keep our own cows, so that we know that the milk that we offer is from protected cows. So nowadays, unfortunately, of course, outside of ISKCON, but even within ISKCON, we're still offering non-ahimsa milk. We're still offering non-ahimsa food as well, because that food is not to the standard that it should be. And I mean, Prabhupada wanted us to offer what devotees are growing. Prabhupada wanted us, therefore, to have communities where such foods were produced and such foods were offered to our centers in the cities where we are preaching. You know, otherwise, if we are not coming to that standard, if we're not making sufficient efforts to come to that standard, and it is very doubtful that we are making sufficient efforts. I would say that we are definitely not making the kind of efforts that we should be, and therefore it is Krishna knows all of these things, and therefore definitely Krishna is not pleased by receiving offerings that actually are not to the actual standard, isn't it? We've been given these instructions by Srila Prabhupada so many decades ago, and we have had more than sufficient time to act on those instructions. So therefore, I mean, Krishna is a person. It's like when we deal amongst ourselves. we can detect, we can understand the actual, intent of someone. Sometimes it may take a little more time for us because we can't see in their mind, we can't read their minds. But Krishna is within the heart, and he knows absolutely everything about each and every individual, devotee and leader, uh, naturally within our ISKCON society. So this is when we by not doing this, we are allowing, for example, this kind of abuse and exploitation to continue to both Mother Cow and Mother Earth, Mother Bhumi, and therefore knowing how Krishna is so affectionate to his cows, that is not uh, uh, very pleasing to the Lord, and therefore we definitely, especially because it is such a core concept and principle to our philosophy, Vedic philosophy, Vedic culture. So we definitely have to work on that a lot more than we have so far, and uh, because it is also explained by our acharyas that the consciousness in which someone is cooking will affect the result of that cooking. You see, so what to speak of the ingredients, the foodstuffs. Uh, I mean, we know right away when we eat food that is not properly cooked or whatever like that. What to speak of Krishna, whose senses are super, you know, sensitive and whatnot. So that is one of the, although many devotees don't like to discuss very much about Varnasrama, but this is one of the foremost aspects within Varnasrama that that devotees need to be much more aware of, and unfortunately they are much less aware because we continue to buy commercial milk, for example. We continue to, even though 15 years ago, I believe, maybe 2005 or something, a GBC resolution was passed whereby our city temples should make an effort to purchase produce from our devotee farm communities. And of course, more recently, I think 2015 resolution, whereby maybe a little bit later, whereby 2022, as we mentioned earlier, in all of our temples, we should only be offering ahimsa milk from protected cows, not ordinary commercial milk. So yeah, that needs to be discussed. Not only discussed, but needs to be acted upon much more than it has so
There is a
far.
prediction from Prabhupada also. ISKCON made fun.
Yes.
I think Prabhupada once he instruct. I think he told in one conversation. Prabhupada mentioned that all over all temples will be depend on nature because they produce any huge farm produce.
Right.
They procure from there.
Right. Well, you mentioned about Medchal farm. Um, that same instruction Srila Prabhupada uh, gave for actually all of the farms. Prabhupada wanted that at every city temple have a farm community connected or attached to that particular city temple, whereby within a particular, 30, 40, 50 kilometer radius, for example, so that the deities could have fresh, pure, wholesome milk, and as well as natural, organic, fresh foodstuffs, produce. Yeah. So that is unfortunately not the case in some places, um, but very few places it is taking place. I think we need to close. Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Gaura Pimanandi.